Welcome ladies and gents to another Star Citizen closer look video. In this episode we take a closer look at Aegis Dynamics. Welcome back guys. As usual, let's have a closer look at the name Aegis Dynamics. What does it mean? Where did it come from? Well, to understand the origin of the name, one must look first at the formation of the company. Aegis Dynamics was founded from a merger between Earth-based Aegis Macrocomputing and Davian-based Dynamic Production Systems. Aegis Macrocomputing, Dynamic Production Systems. Now the goal of this merger was to explicitly construct naval spacecraft. So hence Aegis and Dynamic was used from each company to form Aegis Dynamic. Now, we all know what dynamic means. Being flexible, being fast, being able to change. But what does Aegis mean? I never knew what Aegis actually meant, and I had to go into Wikipedia, basically, to find out what it meant. So, Aegis is found in a book, I think, called the Iliad, which is a very ancient work of poetry in Greece, ancient Greece, obviously. And the Aegis was first stated as being a device carried by Athena and Zeus, which we all know are very prominent gods in Greek mythology. And this Aegis was interpreted as either an animal skin or a shield, with sometimes the face of a gorgon on it. So like animal skin protecting you or a shield, both kind of allude to protection, safety. So yeah, but the modern concept of doing something under someone's aegis means doing something under the protection of a powerful, knowledgeable, or benevolent source. So the word Aegis is identified with protection by a strong force. And I think that's the epitome of Aegis Dynamics, right? Power, strength, force, protection. Rah! That's Aegis Dynamics. We know it was born from a merger of two companies, Aegis Macrocomputing on Earth and Dynamic Production Systems on Davian. It's obviously a human spaceship manufacturer, and it was formed in 2532, making it 421 years old. Now, let's keep it all in context with all the other ship manufacturers that I've been reviewing on the Closer Look series of videos. And remember, RSI is about 915 years old, and that's the oldest ship manufacturer. MISC is 148 years old. Drake is about 108 years old. Anvil is close to 200, more like at about 180 years old. So, Aegis Dynamics is 421 years old. So that makes it the second oldest ship manufacturer I've personally looked at in this series so far. It's the second oldest. Now the company grew to prominence, becoming a favorite of Aymar Messa, who was the emperor. I like to call them emperors because they're emperors. Let's not kid ourselves. He became the favorite of Aymar Messa during the First Tavaran War. This was during 2541 to 2546. And Aegis craft became synonymous with ruthless, oppressive regimes. So they really won all the government contracts. They really cozied up to the emperor and kind of became synonymous with essentially being the iron fist of the emperor at the time. Moving a little bit forward in the timeline from 2643 to 2708, under CEO Hannah Chan, Aegis developed the Javelin class spacecraft, the massive Javelin that we all know, and Chan used a good relationship with the imperator at the time, Ilyana Messa VI, to secure even more contracts for the company. Aegis also established diamond laminate standards for cockpits, which improved the safety of spaceships. Again, that whole Aegis protection mythos playing out here. After the fall of the Imperator, most of Aegis's military contracts were stripped. and the company seemed destined for bankruptcy with massive layoffs. However, Aegis craft began to be adopted to civilians, repurposed for non-military uses, very much like Anvil did. In turn, the firm has shifted, softening its image and focusing on civilian variants for their current generation designs. Now, is there a lesson here? Does it pay to get too close to a particular regime or getting too involved in politics? Sure, it might pay your bills for a very long time, but there might be a time of reckoning, a revolution of sort, where you kind of get thrown out with the bathwater because you were too close to a particular regime. I don't know, just observing. So these days, Aegis only produces a few craft. The old Retaliator bombers have been repurposed for widespread use. The Idris frigate, as we all know, named after the Battle of Idris 4, has been demilitarized for private ownership, and we're well aware of that, fighting Ninetails and stuff, who all seem to have Idrises. And even a ship that's manufactured by MISC, the Starfarer Gemini, is sold under the Aegis Dynamics brand. So that's a brief history of Aegis Dynamics. Let's jump into the fleet. Welcome, guys. This is the Aegis Dynamic fleet. Viewing it on StarJump Fleet Viewer. I think it's one of the best ship viewers out there at the moment. So big shout out to them. You can find it at hangar.link. I'll have the link below as well. It's really easy to use and really quick. And I think they've even added space stations and stuff. So they've added more than just ships, and they'll probably continue to add more and more stuff for us to see, which is really cool. Anyway, here is Aegis's fleet. It's two groups, guys. I've got all the ships on the left hand side. On the left hand side, I've got one ship on the right hand side. On the right hand side by itself here is the Reclaimer. The reason I've put that there is I believe that to be an industry ship, and that's the only industry ship really in the Aegis fleet. Remember, my closer looks are a closer look at the ship manufacturer as a whole. We're not going to deep dive into every one of these ships and exactly what they do and the nuances and differences between the different variants. I'll probably make another series of videos that sort of gets stuck into that. We want to look at the high level sort of capability, messaging, philosophy of these ship manufacturers in these videos. So very military is what comes across. This group on the left hand side are essentially killers, and they're just tuned to destroy other ships or control space in some shape or form. There's not even that much flexibility in these ships. Like Anvil is also a military ship manufacturer, but Aegis Dynamics seems to be even more focused on a single dimension of combat, which is destroying another ship. Anvil had drop ships, it had boarding ships, it had repair and refuel ships, it had ground vehicles, it had transport. It had a wide array of military tactical purposes for their vehicles, whereas Aegis is even more focused on literally just destroying the other guy, in my opinion. So let's quickly start with having a look at these ships. Now I'm going to go straight to the Gladius, right? The very famous Gladius. This is the Valiant skin, which is dedicated to a pilot that was the first pilot to kill a Vandal in combat. So they've created this Valiant testament. Now this, with its 3 size 3 weapons, and I think it's got the highest maneuverability, is a PvP beast. It's an old craft lore-wise, but it's constantly being updated, and it's a very historical and famous light fighter. It's a favorite amongst PvPers today as well in the real game. So that is the Gladius, a light fighter. We've also got the Saber, which is more of a medium fighter. It's more of a stealth craft. It's somewhere between, well, it's exactly between a heavy fighter and a light fighter, where you need maybe a little bit more firepower, but still have a light footprint. These things can rapidly respond to events, and they're built for stealth. So you've got the normal Saber, you've got the Saber Comet, which is bit more finely tuned for dogfighting in its armament, and then you've got the Raven, which is even more stealthy than the other Sabers as well, and I think it has a very small EMP if I'm not mistaken. So to me, the Saber's taken some, very loosely taken some stuff from the F-14 with its dual engines, dual fins at the back, and swept wings. It kind of, I think, has taken some design principles from today's F-14 Tomcat, and it's an interesting ship at the moment, and that's a medium, let's say, stealth fighter. Then we've got the very beloved Avenger class of ships, which are is it a light fighter, medium fighter? It's kind of somewhere in between. Maybe it's a light fighter. I'm somewhere in between. It's you can get it as a starter ship. It's very beloved. It's got that sort of space shuttle look to it, with the white on top and the black underbelly. It's mainly used, I wouldn't call this a frontline military aircraft, but it still was designed for the military, but mainly just for, patrolling areas that aren't, heavily being attacked. So UE use these to patrol. Now, the beauty of this ship is that it has some space in the back. It's got a decent little cargo space in the back. You can use it to transport people, obviously, and they did that. They used it to put prisoners into as well. And the Warlock here has got a pretty good EMP to disable ships. So a little bit versatile. It's got cargo space or an EMP, and it's an okay fighter as well. It's obviously not as good as the Gladius, but a cool little, not a frontline ship per se. Then you've got the very much feared Vanguard series of, let's say, heavy spaceships. You've got the Hoplite, which is a dropship version. You've got the Harbinger, which is a bomber version. You've got the Sentinel, which is got, I think, the most powerful EMP in the game, and it's very, very formidable. When I encounter a Sentinel, I'd be lucky to survive an engagement with the Sentinel, because that EMP just can destroy you. And then you've got the normal Vanguard Warden, which is a heavy fighter, if you like. These things are heavy duty, long distance. They've got a turret as well. You can see the 4 different variants, so they're relatively flexible in a military sense. And extremely formidable. To me, these take design principles from the Messerschmitt 110. You can see the dual engines, you can see the 4 guns in the nose. The Messerschmitt 110 also had many different variants, and it was also a heavy fighter / bomber / whatever you wanted it to be. So to me, this is the spirit of the Messerschmitt 110. Again, I'm just seeing some design principles, some kind of swept wings a little bit, dual fins in the back, which kind of is prominent across these ships that we're looking at. And then carrying on with that kind of niche military hardware that Aegis likes to build, we've got the beloved Hammerhead, which is like a anti-fighter ship with many different turrets, and we're all very familiar with the Hammerhead. It obviously kind of looks like a Hammerhead ship. It's, don't know why it's got that gap in the middle there. I think that's a bit of waste of space. I'm not sure why they put that there. But it's got what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, is it 6 turrets, I believe. Each turret's got 4 guns on it, so this can really, you know, just lay down a lot of firepower. But it's really meant to protect bigger ships from small, annoying fighters. That's kind of its main role. Then we've got the Nautilus. This will be interesting to see how this turns out in the game. It's a mine laying game. It's a mine laying ship. So it's got drones and it can lay mines to secure an area of space. I don't even think Sig knows how that's going to work out yet. It's a very niche role for a ship. It'll be interesting to see when this comes out and how it's going to play out as well with mines and how people will use it. What spaces will be important enough for orgs to lock down, and will it be effective in locking down space? Then we've got the Retaliator. There's 2 variants of this. I'm only showing one. There's the normal Retaliator and the Retaliator Bomber. Very old ship. Kind of like the Gladius. Very famous. These things are designed to destroy capital ships. So squadrons of these have been fighting with the UEE, especially under the Mesa regime, for a very long time. Next up, after the Retaliator, we have the Redeemer, which is a newer craft compared to the Retali, and it's a gunship. So this thing, again, is quite versatile combat-wise. It can probably hold its own against a couple of light fighters whilst trying to damage some very large ships as well. It's got some very large turrets mixed in with some lighter turrets to essentially be annoying to anyone that it meets. It's quite a formidable opponent. It's very tanky. And the mix of turrets when fully crewed can pose a problem for a large or small ships alike. And then we've got the stealth killer itself, the Eclipse. Again, very niche. The assassin, the sniper. It's a stealth ship that's designed to knock down or damage heavily capital ships as well. Very much like the Retaliator, except a lot more stealthy than the Talion. Very formidable, considering that, you know, you won't even know what hit you when you're dealing with an Eclipse. Next up, we've got obviously the elephant in the room, guys, the Javelin, which I use to kind of get a sense of scale of most of the ships, because it's one of the biggest ships, or if not the biggest ship that you can buy from the store, I think. I'm not sure if you can buy the Bengal. There are bigger ships than it, but this is the very famous Javelin, probably one of the most famous UEE ships. It's a destroyer. It's modular. It's got massive amounts of turrets. And it's just designed to control the space around it. It's extremely formidable, and I would say it's Aegis Dynamics sort of flagship. Then we've got the all famous Idris as well, which is a frigate, which is, I think, smaller than a cruiser, but obviously bigger than a bomber. So frigates are a little bit more maneuverable, a little bit faster. There's different variants of the Idris as well. There's one that's kind of configured to take more cargo. It's got a big ass gun on the nose of this thing. You know, again, designed to destroy larger ships. And it's very much a... And yeah, it's destroy larger ships, and it would be a ship that would be, for example, escorting a Javelin in one of its roles, as well as projecting power. But this has been, the Idris, as we read, has been civilianized, if you like. So that's why the Ninetales and anyone else can really get their hands on an Idris, which is a pretty scary universe to live in. And then we've got this quirky ship, the Vulcan, which is like the only kind of non-killing type military ship. It's a repair and refuel ship, which is a support ship, and I actually think it's a bit of an ugly ship. I'm not a big fan of the way that it looks, but its role of repairing and refueling would be amazing, especially once Pyro comes out. And I really look at refueling and repairing to be, especially in the context of Pyro, to be a really awesome help for people that want to live the life of criminals or pirates, because most points of interest don't allow people with crime stats to repair and refuel. Now, the points of interest on the moons and stuff still do. They might change that in the future, I'm not sure, but I'm hoping the repair and refuel mechanic becomes super useful to people that want to do piracy and stuff. And there might be some pirate orgs or something that are friendly with some civilian orgs because they provide some form of repair and refuel. But I don't want a theory craft. It mainly doesn't work out that way. Pirate orgs will just buy their own repair and refuel ships, to be honest. So that's the only kind of support ship that's, not designed to like kill something. And that goes to what Aegis Dynamics is. They don't make a large amount of ships. They make, the formidable Javelin, the Idris, the Hammerhead, the Redeemer. Like, these are all formidable ships that, when you encounter them, especially if they're manned by players, it'd be very, very difficult to overcome. The only support ship being the Vulcan. Everything else is, so they're very niche. They're even way more niche than Anvil. Anvil is also a military manufacturer, but they have a more broad scope of different roles to help in warfare and tactical situations. Now, having said all that, there is one ship built for industry, and that is the Reclaimer, that now we can actually use for salvaging, which is really good for Reclaimer owners. Now, this thing is a beast. It's ugly. It's pretty. I don't know. It looks like a bulldog to me. It looks like an animal. It doesn't look like it should be flying. It's a really unique design. Some people love it, some people hate it, but it's a large salvaging ship. So this is an industry ship, and you can have it as a career, make money and all that sort of stuff. So it's the lone industry ship in the fleet of Aegis, and that kind of sums up Aegis Dynamics, a very, very niche military ship manufacturer. So here we are, Davian. That's the system where Aegis Dynamics is headquartered, guys. And it's quite an important system in the history of mankind, because it's the first system that humanity encountered a sentient alien species, the Banu. So that's where the peace treaty was also drawn up, and hence it's a rather important star system. Now, I always like to look at the star map, keeping in mind where the Vandal kind of front line is. So depending how you rotate it, it's always going to look a little bit different, but that's my point of reference, is the kind of Vandal Empire location, and then you kind of have the UEE in the middle, sandwiched in the middle, and then on the other side you have the Xi'an Empire, which is these green things. So I kind of look at it as where the meat in the sandwich, even though we're friends with the Xi'an at the moment, which is great. And the Banu have got a sprinkling of systems. They don't seem to be as prominent as the Xi'an nor the Vandals. So where is Davian? We know we've discovered that Sol, our home Earth system, whatever you want to call it, is quite close to the Vandal front, and Davian's not too far away from that as well. So in the big picture of things, it's kind of towards the Vandal Empire a little bit. There's 3 jump points from Davian. One of them goes to Cathcart, which is a weird no man's land. It doesn't even have any planets. It's just like a bunch of asteroid fields, and it's become a junkyard, to be honest. Cathcart has. So it has a path to Cathcart. There's a second jump from Davian to Ferren. Ferren used to be a very rich solar system until, like we do as human beings, we just pillaged the crap out of the planets in Ferren, and it went from being very rich to now extremely poor solar system, with people leaving. I think the prominent planet was called Asura, that was being mined and pillaged, if you like, and as soon as that ran out of resources, people just abandoned the solar system, and unfortunately there was no other planets around that could kind of stop the bleeding and enrich the people there at all. So think of it as a very, very poor neighborhood is Ferren. And Davian's third jump is to Kano. Kano, I don't know much about. Let me just open up the disk here. Kano is a 4-planet star system discovered in 2463. The largest population in the system is located on the planet Kano 3, an ocean world that geoengineers were attempting to terraform. That's right, until developing life was discovered in the deep ocean. Since then, protective laws have been put into place, and the current inhabitants are restricted to living in arcologies under the northern ice cap. So here, humanity is kind of thinking, or has thought out, how we deal with, alien life on planets. Do we just go in and destroy everything, or do we respect other life forms and try and live in parallel with them? So that's what's happening in Kano. So these are the 3 jump points from Davian. So let's have a closer look at Davian itself. Davian 1's, there's 4 planets in Davian. Davian 1's pretty much dead. Davian 2 is the headquarters of Aegis Dynamics, and it's an interesting place. It's been terraformed, but because the atmosphere is so thin, people are forced to live under massive biodomes. So that's quite interesting. There's also a satellite planet as well. I mean, this is quite a large planet. When you zoom in on this, it's interesting. The moon is sort of significantly smaller than the Earth, but this satellite planet, which is named after a famous scientist that helped improve quantum travel. Let's see if we can get his name. Named after local physicist Dr. Daniel Penselin, who worked on improving quantum drive efficiency, helped redefine long-distance travel. So as we know, Roberts Space Industries invented the quantum drive, so Dr. Daniel Penselin helped improve the technology further, and that's what this satellite is called. And it's quite large compared to Sestulus, which is where Aegis Dynamics is located. It'd be quite interesting to be on a planet that has such a large sister planet or satellite dancing around it. I'd love to be there. So there's not much more to add about Davian. Unfortunately, I couldn't get any pictures of the cities or anything that that kind of represents that particular planet. There is Davian 4, which is a massive ice planet, and like I said, this is the place that we met the Banu, first contact with the Banu. So there is a museum orbiting this kind of large ice giant, ice frost planet, if you like. There's a Banu museum that orbits it, and you hopefully, maybe, who knows, one day we can go and visit this Banu museum. It's a testament to the alliance of humanity with the Banu. So, I mean, my conclusion is that Davian's in a little bit of a desolate part of the verse. It's connected to essentially a junkyard. It's connected to Kano, which then actually, Kano itself connects to Pyro, which then connects to Stanton. So we're we're 3 jumps away from Stanton here at Davian. So it's not that far away from Stanton, to be honest. And it's also connected to Farron, which is a bit of a, very poor solar system. So that sums up Davian and the Aegis Dynamics headquarters. The first place that we met the Banu, I think, is the highlight for me of Davian. And I hope you enjoyed it, guys. That is my summary and high-level look of Aegis Dynamics. There'll be more closer looks coming soon. Don't forget to like and subscribe. If you have any questions, or if you have any ideas on any shows or any topics that you'd like me to cover, please leave that in the comments. Until next time, bye for now.